Thank you, John. Before we go to questions, I'd like to recognize the full committee chairman, Tom Cole. I'm sure someone that needs no introduction to everyone here, and thank him for joining us today. As the first Native American to serve as chair of the Appropriations Committee and a member of the Chickasaw Nation, he continues to be the biggest champion for Indian country, and I'd like to yield to Chairman Cole for any remarks he may have.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Pingree. Good morning to everyone. Thank you all for being here this week and taking time to testify on important issues affecting your communities. This is actually my favorite set of hearings to get to attend because we hear from all of Indian country, and I'm always struck by the diversity and, frankly, the quality of the testimony. And it really helps us as we make our decisions. As an enrolled member of the Chickasaw Nation of Oklahoma, tribal issues have always been extremely important to me and continue to shape my work as a member of Congress and chair of this important committee. I have been and will remain committed to ensuring the federal government upholds its trust responsibility to Native Americans. We have champions of Indian country and the chair and ranking member of this subcommittee who care deeply about the issues you all are here to discuss. They've proven that tribal issues are not Republican or Democrat. They're truly bipartisan. I'll continue to work closely with them to ensure we provide the services, resources, and advancements needed throughout Indian country. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time and traveling all the way to be here today. Your voices directly shape this subcommittee's legislation each fiscal year. I want you all to know that every year we hold these tribal witness days. These members and staff hear you and listen to you. I look forward to hearing the testimony from each of you and working with my colleagues to advance our commitment to tribal communities across the country. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the time, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom does a great job, and he is one of the busiest people in Congress that you can imagine because he not only deals with just this issue, but a gazillion of them. I don't know how he does it all, but thanks for being here today,
Thank
Tom.
you.
I want to first ask a couple questions. Just you'd think I'd know this, but I don't. How many bands of Chippewa Indians are there? And how closely are you affiliated?
In Minnesota, we have a total of 7 Ojibwe tribes.
Okay.
And 4 Lakota tribes.
Are they affiliated closely? I mean, is it
6 of the bands are members of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, and we are very closely affiliated with each other, mostly over the competition of who has the best wild rice. And I personally invite you to Fond du Lac, and I will guarantee you personally I will have the best wild rice prepared for you.
I can feel
in
a
the
competition
world,
coming on here.
in the world.
So we have 6 Ojibwe tribes in Wisconsin right now, apparently, and throughout our Glipwick staff, there's 11 Ojibwe tribes, Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, that share our treaties.
Do you each have separate treaties with the federal government, each band, or was it one treaty?
We have multiple ones. 25.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up for me. You brought up something, Bruce, that is interesting that's going on. You mentioned fire safety. We had really 5 wildfire fighting agencies in the federal government. Big one in the Forest Service, obviously. And then we had the BLM, the National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, and the BIA. They've combined those that were in Interior into one firefighting agency. What's your thoughts on that, and how's it working out? Or what's your concerns, if you have any?
I was a wildland firefighter myself. My dad was. And our youth are. So the biggest thing is equipment. Equipment failure is unacceptable in a situation like that. So equipment is a big part of it, and we have to have a living wage. In our tribal communities, we've been removed from all economic centers. It's very difficult to maintain good employment with the added cost of living in rural Minnesota. Lack of infrastructure. I could go on for hours. Yeah. That's why I invite you to Fond du Lac, because I will gladly sit with you and explain all of these different disparities that prevent tribes from moving forward in this world of 2026.
Well, it is. You bring up some good issues, and it is this movement that's going on in the wildfire agencies, and may be the best move in the world in terms of getting things done. It may not be. I don't know, but we're watching very closely about how this works, and it may be that it's better to coordinate, and you might have more coordinate, but you might lose some control when we put it under a central agency like that. You brought up something that I mentioned in the first panel that is of concern to me, and that is I know that when I've gone and talked with the Shoban tribes on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, that they train their officers, they train their firefighters, and as soon as they get trained, they get a better salary in Pocatello or Idaho Falls, which is just down the road. So how do we keep those people on the reservation doing the job that they were trained to do and are qualified to do? I mean, that is a huge issue throughout Indian country.
Sir, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'd like to mention that each one of our respectful tribes here sitting at the table today, we have to look at the economics provided for each one of our communities and surrounding communities, and this is what keeps our nations together, I guess, per se, in our territories. We're the biggest employer in like 5 counties right now, and we produce like 900 and some jobs where we're at. But, when they cut funding, they're actually not cutting just funding to the reservations. You're cutting funding to the surrounding communities. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that here while I'm here today because that's a big part of our lifestyle there back home.
I appreciate it, John. Ranking Member Pingree.
Thank you very much. Just want to thank you again for your testimony and the many issues you brought up, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for bringing that one up. I feel like you're right. We hear that every year, and some year we have to be able to tackle this idea of parity within the police forces because it's just such a long-standing issue as well as the court systems. I know you brought up a lot of other things that we'll hear about today, but I really appreciate hearing more about housing and substance use disorder, mental health, all the things you're working on. So thank you for bringing that firsthand information. It really is helpful to us. Appreciate you being here. And I'm going to take you up on the wild racing.
All right.
Favorite of mine.
We'll go up and we'll have a competition between all of them, and she'll be the
Anytime.
Mr. Chairman?
Do I get an invitation too?
Oh, sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, well, first of all, I apologize for missing most of your testimony, so I don't know, I'm in a very good position to ask a very intelligent question. I only caught the last of John's testimony, but I will ask you this just quickly. You laid out a number of needs, obviously, where federal government's come up short. If you had to pick the biggest infrastructure challenges you have, the thing that is stopping you from moving forward, what would that be?
If you're asking us, it is sanitation is a big problem. We have to adjust our housing guidelines. And as far as in rural Minnesota, if you make $15 an hour, you can't even afford to drive to work. And most of our tribal housing programs, you're no longer eligible for tribal housing. And so then most of our reservations, almost every one of us, we were removed from the economic centers, but we chose to be around beautiful landscape. Any of us that are checkerboard reservations, Americans are moving out to the rural areas too. They love their recreational homes. Counties are pressuring to increase property taxes. It makes it really hard to have employees that aren't tribal members to find affordable housing around the reservations. And so they have to travel long distance. And sometimes the infrastructure is just not there. And like I said, if you come to Fond du Lac or the Duluth, Minnesota area, big tourist area, I will gladly go over this in extensive. I grew up there. I lived there.
Please.
I wasn't sure if I could bring up the housing issue, but it's actually connected to everything else. So in my area, and I always use my Michigan map, I live right here. We have the good fortune to live in a beautiful location right on Lake Michigan. But that also brings a lot of resort. It brings a lot of folks up there to vacation, and it's been happening for generations. And because our reservation is checkerboarded, we are always competing for land with those that have a little bit more to spend. And for us, in trying to attract and retain employees for our tribe, we really see the struggle with affordable housing for them, for the workforce. We've partnered with the local community. We just built workforce housing in partnership with the city of Petoskey, Michigan, so that we could have housing for doctors and nurses and law enforcement officers and fire staff. And it's really a continued issue. I can echo what Mr. Savage had just said about the difficulty with even our own citizens who want to move back home and work for the tribe. With the pay that they are receiving in our area because of the high cost of living, they're finding it hard to find housing so that they can even come back home and contribute in a positive way to our community. Because the caveat is then they also don't qualify for our tribal housing programs because they make too much money. So I hear probably on a daily basis from at least one citizen who doesn't understand why that's the case, and they want me to fix it tomorrow. So any kind of help in that respect would be wonderful. Thank you.
And I agree completely with what everyone has said here about housing. We have a large membership, and right now we're unable to meet their needs housing-wise, and housing is one of the most precious gifts that our tribal governments can provide to our citizens. The Sault Ste. Marie tribe experiences the same things that the other tribes are experiencing in terms of housing costs. We're home to the Sioux Locks, which is undergoing a massive renovation. We have a lot of well-paid workers that are coming into the area from out of town, out of state. Is driving the cost of housing up. And when I talk about housing, I talk about all forms of housing: emergency housing, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, home ownership opportunity, low-income housing, elder housing, all the above. A close second would be healthcare in terms of infrastructure. Our people are disproportionately impacted by a myriad of different health issues. And increased resources are one of the few ways that we can correct that.
We actually, this committee, to its credit, about 2 years ago, made a substantial increase in housing. And what we found as we looked at this, I actually chaired the committee at the time. It's Indian housing is actually in transportation, housing, and urban development. It's not in front of this committee. So as much as they're sympathetic with you, they can't do much for you here. They can on the health care issue and have. This committee has a great record of increasing that. But we went back and looked all the way back to when NAHSA, the basic program, was passed for Indian housing. How much were we spending at HUD on Indian housing in the late 1990s? And we found we were spending about 2.8 or 9% of the total HUD budget was on Indian housing. By the time we looked at it, it was down to 1.4%. Hadn't been cut. It just hadn't kept up with the increase every place else. I asked my committee when's the last time we had a hearing on tribal housing? We went back 20 years. There had not been a hearing under either party, so it's not a partisan issue. And it was just, out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. And so we raised back to 2.8. And I think Steve Womack, who chairs that committee, has kept it there. Actually had a modest increase last year. So we're going to do that, but that doesn't make up for 20 years of not investing. You can't do it overnight, and we have a long way to go. So this housing thing really interests me because it is terrible on most reservations. It really is. Most Americans need to go see what it's like to live, in some cases, 20 and 30 people in a house, literally in shifts in some places out in the Midwest. This income thing is also an interesting problem. So tell me what the income level you need is, and what would happen if we raised that income level so more people would be eligible.
So in Wisconsin, we have a wage median that really hurts us because south of 29, it goes all the way across the middle of Wisconsin. The median down there for a good living is $75,000 a year, but you get to the north of that where most of the tribes are, it's $50,000. And most of our tribal members earn between $20,000 and $30,000 a year. So this is where the housing shortage comes in. And I'd also like to say something to Mr. Simpson. 2 years ago, you asked us to use the language when we came in front of you. And I think we were on the second day, and you said you haven't heard the language yet. And when you sponsored our language, you said I think it was 2 years ago, on the tune of $13 million. Well, how much is that really between tribes? You got 575 tribes. It's a little over $2,000. And, who are we without our treaty rights and our language? We have all of these things that we have here sitting at the table. Yeah, they're all wants and needs. But if we lose that language and we lose our culture, who are we then as Native Americans? And this is why I'm testifying on behalf of Lac Flambeau. Thank you.
Are any of you in Ms. McCollum's district?
She's just
Well,
of us a
she sometimes quotes you because I've heard McGwitch before, but you're very lucky to have her. There's not a better advocate for Native American issues on either side of the aisle than my friend who used to chair this committee herself. And so, again, this committee will, if we give them the money, they'll get the job done. It's always a matter of what their allocation is, but their emphasis will be on the things you like. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we went along. Yield back.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Betty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to take a second to set the scene here because a lot of what we're hearing, whether it's healthcare, housing, infrastructure, water, and everything like that, is something that was caused by a law that the federal government passed after many of these tribes signed their treaties. Just recently, it's breaking news in northern Minnesota and in the northern tier. $1.2 million from the Lloyd Johnson Foundation helped Grand Portage put part of its reservation back together. And here's the history of this and why it's even more expensive to do transportation and everything else, especially in this part of the United States. And this is, I'll use the example of Grand Portage. In 1854, Grand Portage signed a treaty with the U.S. government along with Fond du Lac and Bois Forte. They ceded more than 5 million acres to the federal government. The Grand Portage band it's at the tip of what when people look at Minnesota, it's at the tip of Minnesota. But they did preserve their rights to hunt, fish, and gather in the ceded territory, which they constantly had to fight for, but that was in the treaty. Just a few decades after signing that, the federal government allowed land to be divided up along the reservations and sold off to timber and mining interests. The federal on-allotment laws also took land out of community-held tribal ownership and assigned it to individual band members. And I'll tell you, the grifters came in. They came in. The only tribe in Minnesota that didn't get caught up in this is Red Lake. And if you see the chairman of Red Lake in the hall, ask him the story. It's mind-boggling what their folks did. But they saw what was happening to the south of them, so they were able to react. And here's a quote from one of the elders of a council member of Grand Portage, Sean Morin. When they did that, they began carving away the spirit of our people, our culture, piece by piece. They created a lot of trauma within us as human beings, and we're still trying to deal with that today. The Grand Portage tribe thanks them for the Johnson family for doing what they did. And this is a quote kind of from the chairman. The Johnson name carries with it a complicated history with our people. Many of our band members know this history well. It's still recent as felt. So who was Kurt Johnson? Lloyd Kurt K. Johnson was a prominent lawyer and businessman from Grand Marais who died in 2006. His father and uncle held positions on the Cook County Land Department at the time the federal allotment policies began to split up the Grand Portage land. That put him in a prime position to scoop up the land, or in some cases, they did it because they were past due in taxes, which was never really explained that they were going to have to pay taxes on the land that they lived on. So the foundation now has started digging into the hard truth of how they acquired so much of its wealth. They learned that Related Family Trust still held 3 parcels of land in Grand Portage last month, and then that's when the money came to be. So when you're not fully connected to one another, it's even more expensive to provide schools, healthcare, transportation, sewer, water, police, everything else. So, and we're not the only ones that were affected in allotment, but I kind of know the Gwiflik nations the best, the Mass nations the best. And this is why it is so difficult for these tribes, even with the support we give them, to kind of put all the pieces back together again. And so we've done a lot to Chairman Cole's benefit. Thank you for all that you did for being able to purchase land back. And we're still working on that at the federal government, allowing that to happen. But this is part of a traumatic thing that's not that many generations removed. And this is why it's so expensive for these tribes. And I've overtaken my time, but being a social studies teacher, I had to give one little history lesson. And some people might call it woke. I just call it the truth.
Can I respond to that real quick, please?
Very quick.
Very quick. Okay, yeah. So what I was told, from our treaties, and we were talking about Grand Portage here, that the tribal lands that butted up to our reservations were put there for a reason, because we were going to outgrow them. So this is why I wanted to ask, when are some of those lands going to come back? Why should we have to buy something that was originally ours? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, I got one thing. With this, what Ms. McCollum mentioned about the land taken by what I call illegal tax forfeiture still affects the tribes when you try to use the land within the reservation that you privately own as collateral. It can turn up on a claims list, and the USDA won't use it as collateral, which makes us have to go seek other higher interest rate money to participate in agriculture.
Mr. Elsey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know that,
I lived it.
and that's wrong. We could do this for hours. Like we said, we're behind timeline. I just want to take 30 seconds to say I did some homework about the wild rice thing, about Manoomin, and the internet says it's the Menominee tribe that has the best. Is that? And they're called the wild rice people. I'm just saying what the internet says. That's all I'm pointing. Anyway, sometime, Mr. Chairman, I would love to come up with you and Betty, come see you and see how this is done, and get in a canoe and fall into the water. But cool. but see the traditional ways in which you harvest something that's clearly very important to you, and it is a source of pride for you and your people. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. And thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it very much.
Gigawaba men.
Okay. Next is Jason Schlender, Winnay Gravel, and Aja.
Me too. It's my favorite part of being on this committee.
Yeah. It's always interesting stuff.
It is.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. It's also infuriating.
Do we have Winnay around? Going once, going twice. Jason, you're up first.